Welcome everyone to another episode of Lemongrass Roots. Today I'm very happy to welcome one of our esteemed customers from Reynolds Consumer Products, Mr. Boris Voltchenko. And Boris has been a long-time customer of Lemongrass, has been a great customer for feeding back on our services, for leading the way on SAP initiatives, and certainly among our customer group, probably one of the strongest in the field of security around SAP and SAP on cloud. So, Boris, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, man. Good to be here.
So, Boris, as the CISO of RCP, you've had a pretty long journey to get to where you are. Do you want to give us a little bit of background into your SAP journey and your IT journey a bit more generally?
Yeah, I'd love to do that. So in 2020, we took RCP public, for which we needed to build a new SAP for us, and we elected to do it in the cloud, and we chose AWS Cloud to do that, and Lemongrass to be our partner to do it. So 5 years later, the company is public. ECC is running successfully in AWS. It's infrastructure as a service. The next step in our journey is to move to S4. And that is no longer infrastructure as a service play. It's platform as a service play. It's RISE. We chose to stick with AWS Cloud as a platform or environment hyperscaler to host that, and Lemongrass continues to help us in our journey to get there, along with some other partners.
Fantastic. And yeah, I mean, it has been a really interesting journey because there's definitely been an evolution, not just for you and I, but the industry in general has moved on quite a bit from those early days of AWS and IaaS as the main technical challenge. I mean, but this new move to S4 and RISE gives you a new opportunity. And I'm really intrigued about your view on what you can achieve now with this new move and some of the benefits from a security point of view of getting to this.
Yeah, we're super excited about it. It allows us to up our security play and truly start applying some of the zero trust principles when talking about accessing RISE and securing and managing identities there. So in the past, we implemented it as an infrastructure as a service play. We literally opened a new data center in the cloud, and there were timing limitations, there were business constraints, so we needed to do it fast. And majority of our user, as it's our data center, the ability to limit north-south controls was not great. So we did what we could, but we didn't take it as far in the zero trust spirit as we could. And now we're treating this as an opportunity to close all those gaps and capitalize on those opportunities. Mm-hmm. We fully restricting access to RISE only to the identities that need to access RISE and denying access to those that don't. And we are being very granular. We're using firewall rules based on user identities that we grab from AD or Entra to determine whether this identity should have access to RISE or shouldn't, and making those decisions.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting because when I think back to when we moved you to AWS first, I remember you doing a security audit of the landscape of the landing zone, and you were very happy saying, look, this got a great score from the external auditors. But as you say, the evolution of thinking has come on a long way, and the opportunity, as you say, to effectively treat the RISE system as a PaaS means you can focus on I suppose the next layer of management, which is really, as you say, identity, and managing at the identity level rather than at the network level effectively. A kind of a network design. You're now working on permissions for specific identities. You quoted a really interesting number for me recently about the number of person identities versus non-person identities. I mean, what else have you uncovered about that journey of switching to an identity first approach to this?
Yeah, this is the latest data from just came back from Gartner Security and Risk Management Symposium, and I attended a talk by CyberArk, and they actually quote that by their estimation, each human employee has about 82 non-human identities in the enterprise. So that's how it fans out, right? And I don't know, I didn't do the math and calculation myself, but it's staggering number, right? But when you think about how many OT, IoT processes, containers, devices, cameras, right, you have in the enterprise, that starts making sense. So how do you manage all that, and how do you ensure that those identities, in the spirit of zero trust, have access that they need and only access that they need, right? That's and when you start on this journey, it is difficult to impose this kind of a change on the enterprise without a good reason, right? So Boris woke up and decided that we do zero trust. I mean, what the hell? Yeah. Now, when you catch a ride on such a initiative, such as for transformation, right? You look for the opportunities not to do like for like technology swap, right? Bigger processor, more memory, or whatever, right? You look for the opportunity to improve processes, and you look for the opportunities to improve your security stance. So at the very beginning, I was a big supporter of this initiatives. Sure, you go to RISE, you lose some of the control, right? I'm an infrastructure guy at my core, and having somebody else run my SAP servers, I mean, you gotta understand them, and it was a bit of an emotional struggle for me. Yeah. Then, once I got over that, the opportunities started to arise. Oh, I can make it more secure. I can make access more granular. We're also looking at different ways of provisioning. We're taking it beyond network security, right? So we spend time talking about that in zero trust. We're tying that access to Entra and so forth. But we're also doing a lot in terms of provisioning roles within SAP, RISE. Yeah. Our identity governance systems will be doing the business roles provisioning in RISE, and we're also introducing automated segregation of duty checks against GRC, and they will be part of a streamlined automated role provisioning process.
Yeah, and I guess that's the one thing that as you move up that chain, as it were, of control, you're raising the bar, but you're also exposing the gaps. Where are the gaps today? And as you rightly say, I mean, one of the things I've always remembered about access and control and user access specifically is the problem with access aggregating over time, and people not getting rid of the roles they don't need anymore. And as you start doing that at a cloud level, as a PaaS level, of course, you're just you're increasing the number of accesses that you're starting to manage. So it does make sense that you need to, in effect, invest in that process, invest in the ability to control that better. But also, there's a big people change here too. You've got to, everybody's got to start understanding this. It can't just be you trying to force people to understand what a profile is and the importance of getting rid of access as much as getting access. So how are you finding that? I mean, are you leading a bit of an education within Reynolds, or is this something that you're kind of doing us with osmosis? What's the approach to educating the entire enterprise around this model?
I'm not gonna I'm not gonna make it look better than it is. It is a difficult journey, and you're right. It's a big change in people's minds, right? Role-based access security, right, is not a new concept, and it's been around for years. And I think what was inhibiting security professionals and even some of the IT professionals is ability to, I guess, connect with the business, tap into their knowledge, right, and articulate what those roles are, right? You have 20 plans, right? And chances are people who do similar things in different plans are called differently. Yeah. So good luck with streamlining the provisioning, right? So the good old way of doing things was Boris joins the company, right? He works side by side with Eamonn, and Boris's manager says, "Hey, IT or SAP, just give Boris's what Eamonn have and don't bother me," right? So when we inherited this environment from the previous company, there was this, in our request system, there was this infamous copy access from option, which users loved and security and the auditors hated, right, with passion. But okay, so we took this function away, right? And instead we defined business roles and sorry, I should probably go back and say what this function did on the background. It looked at all the T codes that Boris had, and it would assign them to Eamonn, right? Of course, somebody would need to approve of it, but guess what? That would be still that same manager who told me to go copy roles from Eamonn. So for sure, he will approve.
Yeah.
Of course, SOX team would check on the segregation of duty, right? That absolutely needs to take place. And the auditors will have to sign off from that perspective. But the chances are, I've changed 5 jobs over the course of my career, right? So by the time Eamonn gets hired, right, maybe I have more access than I need for my current job. And well, that's what Eamonn gets because it was copy from. Okay, so you take that away. And then when I join, the question is, what am I going to request? Right. So we created business roles, and we try to describe them to the best of our ability. We even had to go and create a that's funny. We had to create a Power BI dashboard where you could plug in a T code. Let's say I know what T code Eamonn had, right? I could plug in that T code, and then the Power BI will tell me, okay, maybe, this T code is part of these 5 roles. Maybe you want to request one of those. So it is a challenge that requires collaboration and cooperation from the entire enterprise, and starting with the onboarding process, right? It ideally, and this is what I am hoping to see it in the future, we would streamline it from the hiring process, from the onboarding process, from the org structure. You're doing accounts payable or accounts receivable, or you're a forklift operator or controller or whoever, right? It should be similar in every single location, every single plan, across every single BU. But then when we onboard you, perhaps I can start making decisions of what permissions you need based on your job description. Now, perhaps, AI or some natural language models can come up with the similarities between clerk or account payable associate or assistant and so forth, and help me make those decisions. But in the end, it requires the entire organization to change the way we think about onboarding employees, provisioning them, entitling them, and ultimately controlling what they can and cannot do within our systems.
And that's, as I said, that's, you're not unique in that. I've seen that happen a lot, but it's an important thing to tackle, because it, as you say, it can make life a lot easier for the business, but also it can make it a lot more secure, and more agile, ideally, if it's done correctly. And you mentioned AI. I mean, obviously, what we're seeing in the world with AI is its ability to match semantic versus technical, in a host of use cases. But also AI, of course, in the security world has got a lot of roles to play. I mean, what's your experience so far? What are you seeing for SAP customers, but for obviously non-SAP surrounding systems as well? Is AI creating more threats, or is it helping you defend better against security risks?
When I went last week to Gartner, I made it a point to try to avoid AI, the sessions that had words AI in them, right? It's a big hype right now, but I still wasn't able to, because it's 2025. If you don't talk about AI, right? You're behind. I've heard what Gartner has to say, and I partially agree with that. That I think that the level of hype at this point of time, I think, creates probably more risks than opportunities at this point. Sorry. And distraction is probably a big one to me, right? You could be doing other productive things, and instead of chasing this hyped promise, I don't deny that in many cases, when you have a very clear goal, very clear objective, very clearly defined use case, and that use case happened to be a good match for automation or AI, that could be a win. And I don't deny that you should be future-proofing your journey, wherever you're going, by considering and thinking about it. But being sidetracked and thinking that that's a solution to all problems, I think that, to me, is a big risk to what people do. And then, sure, there is more efficient tools to attack you when you use AI, but there are also more efficient tools to defend yourself if you use AI, right? It's just the question is, I'm a manufacturing company, right? Do I invest in my own protective AI, or do I try to obtain it from the market? I think those are the decisions that some of the people in my shoes should be thinking of, right? We can go try to hire the machine learning experts and try to come up with the models that will look at our environment and find things, and that the outcome is valid. It's just how you go about it. Or you go to a partner and say, you're doing it for hundreds of clients, right? You probably have tools. Do you have tools? And maybe using partnerships is a faster and better way for companies like mine to get there.
Well, I mean, I think it's, it's, as you say, it's a very hyped area. It's but it's also very dynamic. I mean, there's no doubt it's changing a lot, and it's something that I think everybody has to grapple with it. I think you're right about we've seen it as well in Lemongrass, where we wanted to uh, apply AI to what we do, but there's certain areas we will not invest in because there's other partners out there who spend a lot more money to make it work, and we can consume that when it's ready, versus adding value to things we know we can add value to. So you're right, you got to pick your fight. But I think it's interesting, as we kind of, I suppose, zip through there and reflect again on your journey with the SAP landscape is going from a data center where it was very much moat and bridge, classic security, to cloud where you were starting to adopt, I guess, more sophisticated, at least infrastructure models for security, more software defined, of course, and now moving towards PaaS level with permission-based access, focusing more on that whole quality of access. And now finally, well, not finally, but next, looking into eventually how AI is going to support and risk in that area. I mean, you've been on an amazing there's a really interesting trajectory there. And I think most customers are either doing the same thing or maybe further back in that journey. I mean, what are your key takeaways for people as a bit of a summary towards the end of this, that things that people should bear in mind as they take one or more of the same steps that you've done to really get more value and more security out of their investments?
My lessons learned is, I guess, constantly the crawl, walk, run paradigm is that what we utilized, because you have your objectives within IT, which obviously need to match your business objectives, right? And change is hard. Change is hard for the business, and they need to adapt or adjust to your systems and to changes in your systems while still serving their customers, and that's super difficult. So, cloudiness, right? As it's a lemongrass term, right? Cloudiness comes with the cost, and that is most financial cost, but it's also cost of to humans, right? To people who support it, right? So people who supported the good old data center infrastructure, they can't overnight start supporting, containers and new cloudy widgets and so forth. So what I think Reynolds is doing, we had a choice. We could have gone into data center when we became a public company, right, into our own data center, or we chose not to do that. We went to the cloud. But a lot of things that we did in the cloud were very similar to, how we were doing in the data centers, right? It is clear to me. And it was clear then, right? And then over time, we became more familiar. We learned to do things in the cloud manner. I remember at the very beginning when I joined, and I started to review this SAP migration program, I've noticed that there were opportunities to do more performance testing before go live, right? Because everybody was concerned, running physical systems, you go into the cloud, how SAP will perform, especially across wide area network and whatnot, right? So I said, okay, we probably should do some testing. Well, the testing wasn't part of the plan. Well, in my old life, when I was doing very similar activity with Kraft Foods Group, if we didn't have that in the plan, then obtaining the gear to do that testing and building it and conducting the test would have been a very major undertaking, disrupting the program, changing the timelines, and it would have been pretty disastrous discovery. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, we got together, and Lemongrass told me not to worry, because they created our original production environment using scripts. Lemongrass was more mature than us in this area, so I'm glad we listened. over the weekend, they pretty much ran those scripts and gave us another environment in which we could conduct our performance testing, and then we got rid of it. Right? It was a temporary financial uptick, and then it went away. That is the power of the cloud, right? It compensated for some opportunities in planning that we missed, and we did the test. The test proved success, and then we went live, right? Well, okay, we learned that now you do things in the cloud in a cloudy way. You protect cloud, all the containerization, all the east-west traffic opportunities, and we're taking advantage of them and so forth. And now, when we moving towards PaaS, right? We also reviewing how we did things in the past and what are the better ways of doing that in the future, and doing more restrictions or doing things in a more modern ways. But it comes more natural to us because now the teams are thinking about those things they learned from the time they've been in the cloud, that, oh, I wish we did that differently, or I wish we put in that restriction and so forth. So yes, that's the journey. So we were crawling at the beginning. I believe we're walking now, and we're running. Mm-hmm. And well, the tools that you mentioned, yes, you're correct, Eamonn. You earlier said our security benchmarks. Yes, when we unleashed the Laceworks, I think it was, with CIS of the 1.1, whatever version was there, we had a pretty good score. Guess what? In 23, I believe, they upped the benchmark, and we went from 98 to a much lower number, right? And we had to work and fix that and so forth. So as soon as you reach certain peak, they raise the bar, right? And that's the journey. The bar is always raising, and that's why this journey never ends.
No, for sure. And honestly, I think like everything, the change is continuous in the space, security as much as any place. And but no, I have to say, I think it's a great journey you've been on. And I know other customers of ours who've spoken to you at the customer summit. I've always enjoyed listening to the success you've had. And so just wrapping up, I mean, I think as I said, you've articulated nicely the kind of the way you've onboarded into this capability, the way you've become more expert at it. But certainly, there's an urgency there for people who have maybe started in this journey, who maybe still are kind of holding on to classic data center concepts, that there's a great opportunity as you're moving to cloud, moving to RISE, to rethink it and think about how you can really up the game on behalf of the companies from a security point of view. So Boris, look, all it remains is for me to say thank you so much for your time. I really enjoyed the chat as always. And to everyone listening, thanks again for tuning in. And we look forward to speaking to you on the next episode. Thank you and bye.
Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot. Thanks for listening, and good talking to you, Eamonn, as always.